Hello, and welcome to the 58th episode of Scripture in a Year, hosted by Saints Peter and Paul Orthodox Church in the Albanian Archdiocese of the OCA. Today's reading is Judges chapter 17 through 21. Now there was a man from Mount Ephraim, whose name was Micah, and he said to his mother, "The 1,100 shekels of silver you took for yourself, and about which you cursed me, and spoke it in my ears, behold, the silver is with me, I took it." And his mother said, "Blessed be my son of the Lord." And he returned the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother. And his mother said, "I consecrated the silver to the Lord out of my hand, for my son to make a carved and molten image. And now I will restore it to you." Micah returned the silver to his mother, and his mother took 200 pieces of silver and gave them to the silversmith, who made it into a carved and molten image. It was in Micah's house, and to him the house of Micah was a house of God. And he made an ephod and idols, and he consecrated one of his sons, and to him he became his priest. On those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. There was a young man from Bethlehem of the family of Judah, who was a Levite sojourning there. And the man departed from the city of Bethlehem in Judah to journey to wherever he could find a place. As he made his way, he came as far as Mount Ephraim, and to the house of Micah. And Micah said to him, "Where do you come from?" So he said to him, "I am a Levite from Bethlehem in Judah, and I am journeying to wherever I might find a place." Micah said to him, "Dwell with me and be a father and a priest to me, and I will give you 10 pieces of silver a day, a change of clothes, and all your living needs." So the Levite entered. He began to dwell with the man, and the young man became like one of his sons to him. So Micah consecrated the Levite, and to him he became his priest, and he took his place in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, "Now I know the Lord will be good to me, since a Levite has become my priest." In those days there was no king in Israel, and in those days the tribe of Dan sought for itself an inheritance to inhabit, because no inheritance had befallen it until that day in the midst of the tribes of Israel. So the sons of Dan sent 5 men of their family from their territory, sons of valor from Zorah and Eshtaol, to spy upon the land and to search it out. They said to them, "Go and search the land." And they went as far as Mount Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and there they lodged. While at the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young Levite. They turned toward him and said to him, "Who brought you here? What are you doing in this place? What do you have here?" He said to them, "This is what Micah did for me. He hired me, and I became his priest." So they said to him, "Ask now of God, so we may know if we will be successful on our journey that we go on." And the priest said to them, "Go in peace. The way in which you go is before the Lord." So the 5 men departed and came to Laish, and they saw the people in the midst of it dwelling securely, as the affairs of the Sidonians were quiet. Here no one was perverting or shaming people or events in the land. There were no heirs extorting treasures, and the land was far from the Sidonians, with no ties of mutuality between them. And the 5 men came back to their brethren at Zorah and Eshtaol, and said to their brethren, "Why do you sit preparing for nothing?" And they said, "Arise, let us go up against them, for we have seen the land, and indeed it is very good. Yet you are unmotivated. Do not delay. Go and enter the land and possess it. When you go, you will meet a people at peace, and the land is extensive, for God has given it into your hands, a place where there is nothing lacking in the land." And 600 men of the family of Dan, armed with weapons of war, departed from Zorah and Eshtaol, and they went up and encamped at Kirjath-Jearim in Judah. Therefore they call that place the camp of Dan to this day. There it is behind Kirjath-Jearim, and they passed from there to Mount Ephraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who had spied upon the country of Laish spoke and said to their brethren, "Do you know that in this house there is an ephod, idols, and a carved and molten image? Therefore consider what you should do." So they turned aside there and went into where the young Levite man stayed, into the house of Micah, in peace. They asked how he was. The 600 men armed with their weapons of war, who were the sons of Dan, remained standing by the door of the gate. Then the 5 men who had spied upon the land went up, and they entered the house of Micah. The priests stood up as they took the carved image, the ephod, and the idols, and the molded image, and said to them, "The priest asks what you are doing." And they said to him, "Be silent, put your hand over your mouth, and come with us, and be a father and priest to us. Is it better for you to be a priest to the household of one man, or to be the priest to a tribe and house for a family of Israel?" The heart of the priest was glad, and he took the ephod, the idols, and the carved and molten image, and came into the midst of the people. Then they turned and departed, putting the children, the livestock, and the baggage in front of them. When they had traveled far from the house of Micah, behold, Micah and the men in the houses near the house of Micah cried out and overtook the sons of Dan. And the sons of Dan turned to their face and said to Micah, "What is the matter with you, that you cry out?" Micah responded, "Because you took away the carved image which I made, and my priest, and left, what remains for me? How is it you can say to me, why do you cry out?" And the sons of Dan said to him, "Do not let your voice be heard among us, lest men bitter in soul fall upon us, and take away your life and the lives of your household." And the sons of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw they were far stronger than himself, he turned back toward his house. So the sons of Dan took what Micah had made, and the priest who was with him, and they came to Laish, to a people quiet and secure, and they struck them with the edge of the sword and burned the city with fire. There was no deliverer, for the city was far from the Sidonians, and no agreements of mutuality. It is in the valley of the house of Rahab, and they restored the city and dwelt in it. And they called the city Dan, after Dan their father, who was born to Israel. Formerly the city was named Laish. Then the sons of Dan set up for themselves the carved image, and Jonathan the son of Gershom, the son of Manasseh, and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan until the day of exile for the nation. So they set up for themselves, for as long as the house of God was in Shiloh, the carved image Micah made. And it was so in the days when there was no king in Israel. There was a certain Levite sojourning on the lower slopes of Mount Ephraim. He took for himself a concubine from Bethlehem in Judah. But his concubine left him and returned to the house of her father, to Bethlehem in Judah. She remained there for 4 months. Then her husband arose and sought after her, to speak kindly to her and win her back to himself. His young servant and a pair of asses were with him. So she brought him into her father's house, and when her father saw him, he was well pleased to meet him. Now his father-in-law, the father of the young woman, delayed him, and he stayed with him for 3 days. And they ate and drank and lodged there. Then on the 4th day they arose early in the morning to depart. But the young woman's father said to his son-in-law, "Strengthen your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way." So he sat down, and the two of them ate and drank together. Then the young woman's father said to the man, "Please come lodge here, and let your heart be merry." And when the man stood to depart, his father-in-law urged him, so he sat and lodged there again. Then on the 5th day he arose early in the morning to depart, but the father of the young woman said, "Please strengthen your heart and camp here until the day starts to wane." And the 2 men ate a meal together. And when the man stood to depart, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the father of the young woman, said to him, "Look, the day is now drawing toward evening. Please spend the night. See, the day is coming to an end. Lodge here, that your heart may be merry, and tomorrow go your way early, so that you may get home." However, the man was not willing to spend the night, so he rose and departed, and came to a place opposite Jebus, that is, Jerusalem. There with him were the 2 saddled donkeys and his concubine. They had come as far as Jebus, and the day was far advanced. And the young servant said to his master, "Come, let us turn aside into this city of the Jebusites and lodge in it." But his master said to him, "We will not turn aside into a foreign city where there are no sons of Israel. We will go onward as far as Gibeah." So he said to his young servant, "Come, let us draw near to one of these places and lodge in Gibeah or in Ramah." And they passed by and went on their way. The sun went down on them near Gibeah, which belongs to Benjamin. There they turned aside to find lodging in Gibeah, and when he went in, he sat down in the open square of the city, and there was not a man who would take them into his house to lodge. And behold, an old man came in from his work in the field at evening. He was from Mount Ephraim, and he sojourned in Gibeah. The men of this place were sons of Benjamin, And his eyes looked upward, and he saw the traveler in the street of the city. The old man said to him, "Where are you going, and where do you come from?" So he said to him, "We are passing from Bethlehem in Judah toward the lower slopes of Mount Ephraim. I am from there, and I traveled as far as Bethlehem of Judah. But there is no man to take me into his house. Yet we have straw and food for our donkeys, and bread and wine for me and my handmaid, and for the young man with your servant. There is no lack of anything." And the old man said, "Peace be with you, and let all your needs be upon me. Only do not lodge in the open street." So he brought them to his house, and made a place for the asses, and they washed their feet, and ate and drank. As they were comforting their heart, men of the city, sons of lawlessness, surrounded the house and beat upon the door. They spoke to the master of the house, to the old man, saying, "Bring out the man who entered your house, that we may know him." But the man, the master of the house, went out to them and said to them, "No, my brethren, I beg you, do not act so wickedly. Seeing this man has come into my house, do not commit this foolishness. Look, here is my virgin daughter and the man's concubine. I will lead them out now. Subdue and control them. Do with them what is good in your eyes. But to this man do not do such a thoughtless thing." But the men were not inclined to heed him. So the man took his concubine and brought her out to them. And they knew her and abused her all night until morning. And when dawn came, they let her go. And toward dawn the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her master was, till there was daylight. When her master arose in the morning and opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way, there was his concubine fallen at the door of the house with her hands on the threshold. And he said to her, "Get up and let us be going." But she did not answer, for she was dead. He carried her upon his ass and went to his place. Then he took a sword, laid hold of his concubine, and divided her into 12 pieces. He sent the 12 pieces throughout all the tribes of Israel. And it was so that everyone who saw it said, "A day such as this has never happened, nor been seen from the day of the children of Israel were brought out of the land of Egypt until this day. Take counsel amongst yourselves and proclaim your findings." All the children of Israel came out, all the congregation from Dan, including Beersheba, and from the land of Galaad, and the Lord at Mizpah, gathered as one man. And all the tribes of Israel stood before the Lord in the assembly of the people of God, 400,000 foot soldiers who drew the sword. Now the sons of Benjamin heard that the sons of Israel had gone up to Mizpah. Then the sons of Israel came and said, "Tell us where this wicked deed happened." So the Levite man, the husband of the woman murdered, answered and said, "My concubine and I went to Gibeah of Benjamin to lodge. And that night the men of Gibeah rose against me and surrounded the house. They intended to kill me, but instead they raped my concubine, and as a result she died. So I laid hold of my concubine and divided her in pieces, and because they committed lewdness and outrage in Israel, I sent her throughout all the territory of the inheritance of the children of Israel. Look, you are all children of Israel. Consider and take counsel here among yourselves." So all the people arose as one man, saying, "None of us will go back to his tent, nor will any turn back to his house. Instead, this is what is to be done to Gibeah. We will go up against it by lot. Moreover, we will take 10 men out of every 100 throughout all the tribes of Israel, 100 out of every 1,000, and 1,000 out of every 10,000, to make provisions for the people, to entice them to come to Gibeah in Benjamin, and then do it all the vileness which it did in Israel." So all the men of Israel gathered in the city as one man. Then the tribes of Israel sent men throughout all the tribe of Benjamin, saying, "What is this wickedness that has occurred among you? Now therefore deliver up the men, the sons of lawlessness in Gibeah, so that we may put them to death, and put away the evil from Israel." But the sons of Benjamin were not pleased to hear the voice of their brethren, the sons of Israel. Instead, the sons of Benjamin gathered together from their cities to Gibeah to go into battle against the sons of Israel. And from their cities, at that time, the sons of Benjamin numbered 23,000 men who drew the sword, not including the inhabitants of Gibeah, who numbered 700 select men, from all this people who could use both hands. All these could sling a stone at a hair and not miss. The men of Israel, excluding Benjamin, numbered 400,000 men who drew the sword. All of these were men of war. Then the sons of Israel arose and went up to Bethel to inquire of God. They said, "Which of us shall first go up to battle against the sons of Benjamin?" The Lord said, "Judah as leader will go up first." So the sons of Israel rose in the early morning and encamped against Gibeah. And all the men of Israel went out to battle against Benjamin, and they engaged them at Gibeah. Then the sons of Benjamin came out of Gibeah, and on that day in Israel Benjamin cut down to the ground 22,000 men of the Israelites. And the men of Israel regrouped and again engaged in battle at the place where they engaged on the first day. Then the sons of Israel went up and wept before the Lord until evening, and asked counsel of the Lord, saying, "Shall we again draw near for battle against the sons of Benjamin, our brothers?" And the Lord said, "Go up against them." So the sons of Israel went out to wage war against the sons of Benjamin on the second day. And the sons of Benjamin went out to meet those from Gibeah on the second day, and cut down to the ground 18,000 more of the sons of Israel. All these drew the sword. Then the sons of Israel and all the people went up and came to Bethel and wept. They sat there before the Lord and fasted that day until evening. And they offered burnt offerings and pure offerings before the Lord, because the ark of the covenant of God was there in those days. In those days Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron, stood before it. And the sons of Israel asked the Lord, saying, "Shall we yet again go out to battle against the sons of Benjamin, our brothers, or shall we cease?" And the Lord said, "Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver them into your hands." Then the sons of Israel positioned themselves for an ambush round about Gibeah. And the sons of Israel went up against the sons of Benjamin on the third day, and arrayed themselves against Gibeah as before. So all the sons of Benjamin went out to meet the people, leaving the city empty. As they did before, they began to strike down and kill some of the people, about 30 men of Israel, on the roads, one heading to Bethel and the other to Gibeah, and in the field. And the sons of Benjamin said, "As the first time, they are falling before us." But the sons of Israel said, "Let us flee, so as to draw them out from the city onto the roads." And so they did. So every man rose up from his place and united together at Baal Tamar. And the men of Israel burst forth from their position of ambush at Ma'ar-Ragabah. 10,000 select men from all Israel came against Gibeah, and the battle was fierce. And Gibeah did not comprehend the disaster that was coming upon them. The Lord struck Benjamin before the sons of Israel, and the sons of Israel destroyed 25,100 men from Benjamin that day. All these drew the sword. So the sons of Benjamin saw they were beaten, and the men of Israel gave up ground to the Benjamites, for they relied on the ambush they had prepared against Gibeah. And as the sons of Israel retreated, those men in ambush rose up and quickly charged Gibeah. The entire ambush rushed forth and struck the city with the edge of the sword. And the sons of Israel used a signal of battle with those in ambush. They would send up a signal of smoke from the city. And the sons of Israel saw that the ambush had seized Gibeah. So they stood in battle formation, allowing Benjamin to strike and wound about 30 of the men of Israel. For they said, "Surely again they are defeated before us, as in the first battle." But when the signal cloud began to rise as a pillar of concentrated smoke from the city, the Benjamites looked behind them, and behold, the complete end of the city was rising up to heaven. The men of Israel turned back, and the men of Benjamin hastened away, seeing that evil overwhelmed them. Therefore they looked in the direction of the desert, away from the sons of Israel, and fled. But the battle overtook them, and those from the cities utterly eliminated those in the midst of them. They cut down the Benjamites, chased them from the foot of Nova, and easily trampled them down until they came opposite Gibeah, toward the east. And 18,000 men of Benjamin fell. All these were men of strength. The rest turned and fled toward the wilderness, to the rock of Rimmon. And the sons of Israel cut down 5,000 men. The sons of Israel relentlessly pursued after them as far as Gidom, and struck 2,000 of their men. All of Benjamin who drew the sword that day and fell were 25,000 men. All these were men of valor. The rest turned and fled toward the desert to the rock of Rimmon, even 600 men, and they remained at the rock of Rimmon for 4 months. And the sons of Israel turned back against the sons of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, from the city of Methla, to the livestock, and to everything found in the cities, and they set on fire all the cities they found. Now the men of Israel swore an oath at Mizpah, saying, "None of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin as a wife." Then the people came to Bethel, and remained there before God until evening. They lifted up their voices and wept mightily, and said, "O Lord God of Israel, why has this come to pass, that today one tribe should be missing in Israel?" The next morning the people rose early and built an altar there, and offered burnt offerings and peace offerings. The sons of Israel said, "Who is there among all the tribes of Israel who did not come up with the assembly to the Lord?" For they had made a great oath concerning anyone who had not come up to the Lord at Mizpah, saying, "He shall surely be put to death." And the sons of Israel had compassion toward Benjamin their brother, and said, "One tribe is cut off from Israel today. What shall we do for wives for the large number who remain? For we have sworn by the Lord not to give them our daughters as wives." And they said, "What one tribe of Israel did not come up to Mizpah to the Lord?" And take notice, no one came to the camp from Jabesh Gilead to the assembly. For when the people were counted, indeed, not one of the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead was there. So the congregation set out their 12,000 men from the sons of valor, and commanded them, saying, "Go and strike the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword. And this is what you shall do. You shall utterly destroy every male and every woman who has known a man intimately, but the virgins you will preserve." And they did so. So they found among the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead 400 young virgins who had not known a man intimately, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh in the land of Canaan. Then the whole congregation sent and spoke to the sons of Benjamin, who were at the rock of Rimmon, and called them to peace. Benjamin came back to the sons of Israel at that time, and the sons of Israel gave them the women whom they had saved alive of the daughters of Jabesh Gilead, and it was thus pleasing to them. The people had compassion for Benjamin, because the Lord brought about a rift in the tribes of Israel. And the elders of the congregation said, "What shall we do for wives for those who remain, since the women of Benjamin were destroyed?" And they said, "There must be an inheritance for the survivors of Benjamin, so that a tribe of Israel may not be wiped out. For we will not be able to give them wives from our daughters, because we swore among the sons of Israel, saying, 'Cursed be the one who gives a wife to Benjamin.'" And they said, "Remember, in a few days there is the yearly feast of the Lord in Shiloh, on the north of Bethel, on the road leading eastward from Bethel to Shechem, and from the south of Lebonah." Therefore they instructed the sons of Benjamin, saying, "Go lie in wait in the vineyards and watch. And behold, if the daughters of the inhabitants of Shiloh come out to perform in their dances, then go out from the vineyards, and let every man capture a wife for himself from the daughters of Shiloh, and return to the land of Benjamin. And whenever their fathers or their brothers come to pass judgment on you, we will say to them, 'Have compassion on them for us, since no man received from us a wife for himself in the war, because you did not give to them at the appointed time you transgressed.'" And the sons of Benjamin did so. They took enough wives for their number from those who danced, whom they seized. Then they went and returned to their inheritance, and rebuilt the cities, and dwelt in them. At that time the sons of Israel walked away from that place, every man to his tribe and his family. And they went out from there, every man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. A man did what was right according to his own vision. Here ends the reading for today.